We have a really interesting group of amazing people here with us, trying to wake you up after lunch. So hope that the debate is going to be energizing and will bring a lot of insights and different points of view to share with you. And of course, you're welcome to join the debate. As you know, this a little bit the structure of the session will be that there will be a small presentation of each one of our distinguished members of this panel this afternoon. And then we'll start a little of debate between us. We have already, let's say, pinpointed three issues that we believe that are very crucial to the way that the fashion industry is going and how sustainability can be embedded in this industry as well. And then, of course, we can have a very casual debate with all of us, and it would be nice maybe to finish up with some suggestions or solutions that we have co-created in this session. So please, I mean, you know most of our participants here. The topic of our discussion is the citizen insights and influences, and how the power of sustainable fashion can change lives and bring a message. And this can be done upstream and downstream. Upstream, creating a new paradigm in the industry, in the value chain, in the way that the materials are sourced and are treated. And of course, it can be downstream in the way that we're engaging consumers in order to change, modify the behavior, the buying behavior, the purchasing behavior, in order to shift also the industry. So we have Paul Dillinger from Levi. You've met him yesterday. He's the Vice President and the Head of Global Product Innovation. We have Begoña García. She's from Jeanologia. She's the Global Sustainability Brainbox. Then we have with us Gema Gómez. She's from Slow Fashion Spain. Although it's considered as a platform, she likes to call herself a fashion entrepreneur, so really looking forward to what she has to say about this work that she's doing. Then we have, of course, Enrique Allen from Patagonia, Traceability Manager. And last but not least, we have Enrique Segovia from WWF. So we have here entrepreneurs, leading industries, a company that is changing the game in the industry, and a civil society representative, which I believe it gives us a very broad perspective of what needs to be done in the fashion industry to make it more sustainable. So, no more introduction from my side. I'm Sonia from NOIMA, and I would like to give the floor to Paul. So, you can take your microphone.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, and again, thank you for the opportunity to speak again, especially with such an amazing group of colleagues, many of whom actually work together in various capacities, and we can explore that later. As we discussed yesterday, Levi's was founded on the idea of a useful thing, a pant that was made for miners, so it was workwear, and it was really good at workwear. It was the uniform that built the West in America. But it gained popularity and eventually became an object not of utility but of signification. It became associated with youth culture. It became an object of fashion in that respect, in that it started to identify people as participants in the style tribe. It became the uniform of dissent and rebellion, and became associated with music culture through the 50s and 60s. It became a black market currency in Soviet Union and in Warsaw Pact countries, where it was a commodified object that signified freedom. It was this signifier of Western values of freedom of expression. And so this idea that one object is useful for a miner is an indicator of association with a youth culture, with a music culture, or a culture of rebellion and dissent, or a culture of political discord. The potential for one object to have all those values is one of the ways in which a sustainable aesthetic strategy differentiates our company from other participants in the fashion space. If you look at the back of a pair of Levi's, there's a brown leather patch that has 2 horses trying to pull the garment apart. That was the original promise, possibly the first sustainable marketing campaign, perhaps the first greenwashing campaign. I can't speak to the original 2-horse test. I can tell you that we have a pair of Levi's in our archive that are 138 years old that we could put on and wear today. They would pass our product integrity standards. They were sold by a dealer, not knowing how old they were. They were sold by a dealer, presuming that they were being sold to someone who would wear them. So if we can make product that will last 138 years, our sustainability proposition is durability. And it is both a physical durability and the opportunity to make clothes better as a way of confronting fast fashion and all of the problems that fast fashion represents. It is also a promise of emotional durability, the idea that we will deliver on a promise, whether it's for the useful value of a minor or the descent value to a rock and roller or the rebellious value to an angry teen, that the consistency of the emotional durability of the object allows us to operate within the fashion ecosystem in a way that doesn't compel us to create the kinds of useless, wasteful change that sort of typify the worst behaviors of the broader industry. And I think that's a really important point of distinction, the sustainable value of durability. And I think that's sort of where we, as an authentic brand that prides itself on its consistency, position ourselves with distinction. So that's sort of a summary of our position on sustainability.
So maybe let's move to Begoña now and tell us how have you been implementing new technologies and systems to make this slow fashion possible.
So I have prepared a presentation. I don't know if how it's going to explain better.
Do we have Begoña's presentation?
Okay. So, who is Jeanologia? Jeanologia is a company based in Valencia, and what we do is we supply sustainable technologies for the garment finishing industry. For those that are not familiar with the jean manufacturing process, the garment finishing industry is just a small part of the whole manufacturing process of a pair of jeans, and it's an industry that is very intensive in labor and in resources. So the introduction of the technologies that Jeanologia is promoting within the garment finishing industry, these resources what we have achieved really great reduction on these resources, especially in water and in chemistry. So we are seeing how we are going from an industry which is really artisanal and again labor and water intensive to an industry that is based in technology and expertise, and also an industry that shows the other how the things are made, so that we are communicating that we care about the environment as well. So even though these proven benefits of these technologies, the reality is that the transition from one industry to the other is not as fast as we might think. So we calculate that today only about 20% of the total global jeans production uses this new approach. So thinking on how to move forward, and our idea is, okay, we now have already the objective, and we have the technologies to achieve it, and also we have some metrics like the AM software that help us to know where we are, and that help us as well to monitor the actions that we do. So to keep moving forward, to increase this percentage, we need also knowledge. So this knowledge that to re-engineer all the production processes integrating these technologies, but also we need to understand the whole production chain and understand the other parts of the industry, transferring the good experiences from one way to the other, and this means the whole supply chain working together for the same objective. The education on this side is then key, but the education not just for the industry but also for the final consumer, because at the end they are the ones that can produce this movement. So with this, and this is how 2 days we have been listening about moving forward, moving to this direction, that we will find many different opportunities and new business models that will change completely the way things are done. And we see there are key players on this, and these key players are truly the brands, that they have really the power to make these things happen very fast, demanding cleaner production to their suppliers, but also in a way helping, and this is really where it's going on, so helping the different parts of the supply chain working together for a common objective.
Thank you so much. So now we go to Gema. She's a pioneer in Spain, creator of the slow fashion movement in a country dominated by big brands, more geared towards disposable fashion, I would say. So we would love to hear from her entrepreneurship experience and how she saw this particular moment of truth.
Well, not creator, the term was made by Kate Fletcher, but I have given it to me. Okay. So I also have okay, the presentation. Well, is this on? Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Sonia and also Sustainable Brands, well, Jose and Sandra, who are very good friends to me. So that's the reason why I'm here, to be honest, because they trust the project and they like these emerging brands. They found is one of the reasons too, I think, that we can improve this industry, this market, etc. So, well, first of all, I would like to show you a picture of me. It's not, I don't bring it to show you pink was fashion at this moment, but to tell you where it started. This idea to become, to do something different from I was looking at. So I'm a fashion designer. I've been working for a long time in a company, a textile company. So as all these people, professionals who works in textile company, I went to Asia many times, and it was in this travel where I found that the profession I love was making a huge impact in people and nature. So it was where I decided to start to move forward a more positive fashion. So I decided to start to create Slow Fashion Spain, the sustainable and circular fashion platform here. And I started for 3 main reasons. First of all, it was for spreading the concept. As Begoña said, it's very important to talk about this new concept, because if the consumer doesn't know, it's very difficult to go to them and say, okay, you have to pay the price. So I started to talk about what I have seen, but mainly to talk about the industry, the sustainable industry that was made this change, and also all these little brands, all these emerging brands that was making the change and making real great efforts to start this new positive idea. So secondly, I start to work in farming, but not only forming in technical aspect, sustainable fashion, circular fashion, sustainable materials, forming also trying to make people connect with what is important for them. I mean, if you are not able to take care of yourself, for instance, if you are not able to it's very difficult to be able to take care of the others and take care of the nature, environment, or whatever. So this is, I have many university students, and I work with them for the technical aspect, but also to start to think in a different way, even of themselves, okay? And also to empower brands, emerging brands, to help them to make a name into this difficult market. And thirdly, as networking, my dream was to make a huge community with this similar concept, because it's very difficult, as we have seen here, with so many different ideas, it's very difficult to have the same ideas. But I think we can make it similar, no? To have a similar vision to go through. And also connecting industry, like Begoña, we have been working together many times already, and we're still doing, and with these emerging brands. For me, emerging brands are the answer for consumers' request. Consumers, the market, are asking for diversity in one hand, and also for ethical behavior on the other. And for me, these emerging brands could be the answer to this request. And also, but as the recent Eduardo Galeano, no? The recent passed away, he said a lot of little people doing little things in little places can change the world. So for me, it was the main reason. Thank you.
Thank you so much, a very beautiful quote. And let's go now to Nick. So he can explain us from the point of view of a company that is leading maybe traceability, how do you see the major challenges?
Sure. The question that we had sent to us regarding this discussion is one that I've been thinking about a lot, particularly the issue of what have we done and where are we going, and it's something that I brought back to my experience because it's all about me. But my experience was before I was a social compliance auditor, and we would go to finished goods factories, especially garment or in the textile area, and we would assess factories to the code of conduct of our client. And this is something that was always really apparent at the time. When you go and you look around a factory, you see that the factories have codes of conduct of all of their brands on their walls, and it's confusing because there's the Levi or the Patagonia or the Walmart and all of the different the codes of conduct they appear to be similar, but the actual devil is in the details. So for a factory, they have to hire a compliance person who's dedicated really just to making sure that they're meeting all of the various different nuances in the codes of conduct of their clients. So, that's not really ideal for efficiency for a factory to be working on, trying to just make sure that they're meeting all of the little bylaws of different codes of conduct. So the way that the social compliance industry was working, it started in the 90s, and it's been focusing on finished goods factories, on cut and sew. And my role is now working with raw materials suppliers. And so the area of raw materials is one where there can be huge impacts environmentally and socially, because up until now, no one has been focusing on necessarily in the brand area hasn't been focusing on connecting their actions to farms or to mines or to forests. There has been some movement, obviously, in different sectors, especially food, Electronics have also been very much the focus of their impact on raw materials. But so far, apparel has not really been one of the major focuses of NGO activity or consumer awareness. But it's something that we know there's a huge impact to be had by your changes that you make, either towards organic cotton or use of recycled polyester or use of materials such as a plant-based neoprene instead of fossil fuel-based. So really where we are looking now is, apart from continuing to work with our finished goods factories, we're also looking at trying to expand our sphere of influence to the raw material suppliers. And in one of the things that we're doing that we're really proud of is working with our raw material suppliers on the issue of migrant workers and how they are recruited and their rights when they're working in fabric mills especially. That's on the one hand. It's usually raw material suppliers are not connected to brand names themselves, which is why many times consumers aren't aware of who they are, where the material could be coming from initially. And the same thing goes with for example, a farm. It's very, very difficult to connect the actions of a brand to a farmer in India, and yet there are some deplorable conditions, terrible conditions in many farms around the world. So I really do think that the role of brands to try to go beyond their first tier suppliers and try to get all the way down to the raw material is something that hopefully will be the next generation for, I think, social compliance in the apparel sector. I would hope so, because I think there's a lot of positive impact that can be done there.
Thank you so much for addressing this maybe gap, disconnect between the consumer and the origin of the clothes that he's wearing. Somehow, this is one of the big challenges of the industry. And let's go to Enrique Segovia. He's Director of Conservation and Programs in WWF Spain. They've been strongly working and partnering up with some industry players to create change also at supply level and at let's say, the different ingredients of a final product, a final textile or fashion product. So.
Buenas tardes, voy a hablar en español. Un ecologista hablando de moda es algo bastante extraño, y si encima lo tengo que hacer en inglés va a sonar mucho más extraño todavía. Entonces me siento más cómodo lanzando los mensajes que les quiero lanzar en español. Llevamos un día y medio aquí hablando de sostenibilidad, y yo, como trabajo en WWF, lo primero que quiero hacer es dejar claro que entendemos por sostenibilidad, y de ahí llegaremos a la moda. Tenemos un único planeta y tenemos que vivir, todos los que vivimos actualmente, los seres vivos que comparten el planeta con nosotros y las generaciones futuras, dentro de los límites de ese planeta. Eso es sostenibilidad, no hay otra cosa. En la actualidad estamos fuera de los límites que nos está marcando el planeta. Si usamos el índice planeta vivo o la huella ecológica, que seguro que ustedes han oído hablar de ella, en 2010 el ser humano consumía 1,5 veces la capacidad regenerativa que tiene el planeta para suministrar los bienes y servicios que necesitamos para vivir, incluyendo el alimento, incluyendo los materiales, incluyendo la absorción de las emisiones extra que le estamos echando para la atmósfera. Luego, a este ritmo nos quedan 20 años. Nos quedan 20 años, 25 años, al ritmo actual, para encontrarnos un planeta realmente en una situación, en unas condiciones, yo creo que poco imaginables, ¿no? Hemos oído mucho el foco en cambio climático, pero el problema con el agua, el problema con la biodiversidad, el problema con los bosques, el problema con los tóxicos, etcétera, etcétera, es una cosa que sume y que se incrementa. ¿Qué es lo que tenemos que hacer para revertir esta situación? Y de eso nos está hablando también mucho estos días, ¿no? Desde WWF pensamos que consumir menos, punto número 1, estamos aquí hablando de branding y sostenibilidad, hay que reducir consumo, muy importante, pero no es de eso de lo que estamos hablando ahora. Tenemos que producir mejor también. Y ahí es donde WWF está trabajando con el sector industrial, con el sector empresarial, para producir mejor. Usamos diferentes commodities, nos hemos enfocado en diferentes commodities. Algunas han salido por aquí, FSC, MSC, como sistema de certificación de madera, pescado, carne. Estamos trabajando con los sectores industriales para definir las mejores prácticas al día de hoy. A día de hoy, estas mejores prácticas van cambiando, van evolucionando, vamos consiguiendo mejores prácticas según va pasando el tiempo. Conseguir esas mejores prácticas, ponerlas en marcha a través de sistemas de certificación. Con la madera hemos hecho uno, que es FSC, está por aquí, en estas jornadas y en algunos grupos de trabajo. Con pesca hemos puesto en marcha, con otros, yo digo que con el propio sector MSC. Con el sector de la moda, con los grandes consumidores de algodón, hemos puesto en marcha una iniciativa que llamamos Better Cotton Initiative. Con Better Cotton Initiative lo que hemos hecho ha sido definir buenas prácticas para mejorar, por un lado, la forma de producción del algodón, solo un dato en la forma de producción del algodón. Consume el 12,5% de los pesticidas y fertilizantes que se echan al año sobre el planeta, cuando ocupa el 2,5% de la superficie cultivada del planeta. Estamos hablando de uno de los cultivos solamente más intensivos en insumos, ¿no? Entonces estamos trabajando para mejorar, por un lado, la forma de producción, reduciendo sustancialmente los pesticidas, el agua, cuidando el terreno donde se está haciendo, y por otro lado mejorando las condiciones de vida de los propios productores, comunidades de India, comunidades de Pakistán, los países grandes productores de algodón. Y esto lo estamos haciendo con la industria, con las grandes compañías de moda, grandes compañías consumidoras de algodón, lo estamos haciendo con otras entidades, con Oxfam, por ejemplo, con otras entidades que son las que nos están ayudando a llevar la actividad, el trabajo con las comunidades en terreno. De esa manera, bueno, vamos poco a poco. En 2015, en febrero de 2015, el 3,5% de la producción mundial de algodón estaba bajo Better Cotton Initiative, bajo el estándar de Better Cotton Initiative. Es algo, como digo, que hay que ir avanzando, hay que ir implementando, y además las mejores prácticas no nos podemos quedar en las actuales, tenemos que seguir mejorando esas mejores prácticas. Tenemos que mover la campana de Gauss que nos define los que lo hacen mal, los que lo hacen bien, y el business unusual. Esa campana de Gauss la tenemos que mover para lo que ahora lo están haciendo bien, sea el business unusual. Y siga habiendo otros que lo van haciendo mejor, sigamos moviendo nuestra campana y vayamos consiguiendo de verdad producir mucho mejor el algodón que necesitamos. Una vez que una compañía puede hacer eso, o está en capacidad de reconocer que estás haciendo unas buenas prácticas en los productos que tú estás usando para sacar tu producto final, hay que comunicarlo, y eso será otra parte de la discusión. Y yo creo que ahí es donde la moda tiene mucho que decir. Tiene mucho que decir de transmitir unos valores que tienen que ir implícitos en la forma que tiene la empresa de utilizar los recursos naturales y devolver a la naturaleza aquello que está.
Muchas gracias, Enrique. The voice of the ecologists, which needed to be also heard in this forum. So, thank you so much. I believe that you have briefly described some of the main issues that are surrounding your work right now. I believe that we have come a long way, but there are still some challenges that the industry is facing, and I would like your opinion on that. Basically, we have, even though that we have very committed companies to changing supply chains, to innovate through processes, to touch the people upon their production is based. We have entrepreneurs, we have companies like yours that they are game changers, that you are, from your perspective, changing in the middle, also upstream and downstream what you are doing. We have the voice of people like you that have been around for years trying to create and promote best practices in industry. But still we have a fashion industry that it's kind of reinventing itself every now and then. we have like 4 or 5 collections per year. This concept of fast fashion is still much there. We have a market which is maybe polarized between cheap disposable products and luxury products, and eco-fashion is quite starting there for a niche of consumers with a conscience, but it's still not mainstream. And of course, in order to make it big scale and to make replicable models of production, you need a demand. So for you, which are the main challenges of the industry and how this sustainable fashion can be more mainstream, can be more easy to rapidly escalate, let's say? Paul?
I think one of the most important solutions towards resolving the challenge of fast fashion is sustainability as it manifests in business-to-business relationships. The technology that Jeanologia provides allows us, for example, to make jeans using laser, amplified light, instead of pumice stones to get color loss, instead of sandpaper to make marks, instead of aqueous diluted oxidizers, we can use your ozone technology. It uses gas, ozone gas rather than bleach or permanganate. But the investment in those technologies for a vendor who only has a relationship as long as the next fashion cycle, who only has a relationship promise that is 6 months in duration for the production cycle, because the industry itself, like you said, reinvents itself every 6 months. What is the incentive for a manufacturer to invest in the high cost of a laser machine when they have no promise of future business past this order? We have a relationship with a factory in the Dominican Republic that has a production facility in Haiti, and the one thing that they have none of in Haiti is water, and the solution to manufacturing finished jeans in Haiti is ozone and laser. But when you have so many businesses that are in and out of the relationship so quickly that there's no promise of sustained business, it makes it impossible for them to commit to the investment to manufacture sustainably. It's going in with long-term promise of relationship, sustained relationship. We have a commitment to the Better Cotton Initiative to increase our deployment of that cotton by percentage until we get to a very high percentage of our production will be exclusively the Better Cotton Initiative cotton. And that promise exists within a context that does not allow us to market our relationship with the Better Cotton Initiative. That the business is committing to better cotton and also committing to never market better cotton because we do not want to commodify better cotton. The Better Cotton model exists only in the context of a promise not to leverage it as a marketable, sustainable feature. So that is a promise of a relationship between the organization, my organization, BCI, and the farmer to buy and buy more of with their product without ever trying to leverage that as a way of compelling greater sales. We won't use it as a method of generating the sustainable purchase. And so it's a commitment between these organizations. So this idea of sustained relationships that require real values guidance on the part of the brands and commitment to sustainability independent of market. And that's a challenge because so much of what we do in fashion is done so that we can market it, so that we can talk about it. And so to lead boldly against the promise of not leveraging values as an instigator for increased sales, but to leverage values as a way of changing our ways of making, it kind of goes against the very value of fashion, which is to talk loud about new ideas. And I think that's an important distinction between the true sustainable players and the ones who are just, dabbling or selling.
Thank you, Bob. You please.
I was just going to basically talk about that a little bit more too, in that in terms of your the message that you want to convey to your consumer, part of why perhaps consumers are not focused on this very much is the fact that the messages that they are receiving are sort of confusing, or everyone appears to be saying very similar things, and so it's very easy to assume that any discussion regarding your environmental or your social commitment is greenwashing. And that is, something that's plagued, I think, companies that do take it seriously. But it's something that if you really do show your commitment and you're honest about both what you've done well and also the things that you haven't done well, and you have to be painfully honest at times, you'll gain the trust of your consumer. And one of the things that we discovered with the issue of down that I discussed yesterday with Goose Down was the fact that when we did do our initial assessment of our supply chain, we discovered some things that we didn't like, and we tried to make sure that we were honest on our website about this as well. And what I think it did in the end was help us. It made our job easier because we weren't trying to basically keep up a facade. We admitted a mistake before, showed where we had improved since then, and for our trust relationship with our consumers, it paid off in the long run. But it made telling the story a lot easier because your story doesn't crumble under opposition, essentially. So partly, I think that when you're telling your story about your sustainability journey, you have to be consistent. You can provide plenty of detail without hopefully overwhelming, but you also have to be pretty brutally honest at times, and that I think is what will set you apart from others who are simply going through the motions doing greenwashing.
Well, it's just not really from the point of view of a company, but from the point of view of a consumer, I think that the big challenge for the fashion industry is to engage all the fast fashion industries in this journey as well. So I think this is the biggest challenge that we have, and make them all think in the way that these two companies are thinking, are going in the same direction.
Bueno, yo me voy a animar también como Enrique, yo voy a copiar a Enrique y voy a hablar en español, porque no, normalmente hace muchos años que no hablo en inglés a nivel profesional y reconozco que me cuesta también, así es que yo voy a decir, voy a hablar mejor en español. Yo por un lado, yo sé que estaría muy bien, ¿no?, que todo lo que es la moda fast fashion se transformara, pero quizás eso sería una solución solamente a medio plazo, porque la esencia de un modelo fast fashion consume muchísimos recursos que no tenemos, con lo cual, para mí ese modelo a largo plazo yo no lo veo viable. Por otro lado, pienso que hasta ahora lo que ha sido, es importante entender que lo que se llamaba moda ecológica, moda sostenible, ¿no?, venía de un grupo de gente muy concienciada, ¿no?, de hace muchos años, muchos ecologistas, que a una camiseta verde que ponía "quiero salvar el mundo", ¿no?, pues lo llamaban moda, ¿no?, lo llamaban moda ecológica. Y eso, por un lado, a nivel de consumidor, pues ha creado un estigma, ¿no?, que como algo no apetecible. Gracias a Dios eso está cambiando. Yo eso digo a mis alumnos de la universidad, ¿no?, de moda, digo, sois vosotros los que vais a cambiar el mundo, porque es justamente el diseño lo que puede cambiar las cosas. En ese sentido estoy convencida de ello. Y luego a nivel ya de marcas, de pequeñas marcas, ¿no?, que empiezan, las marcas que ya están en el mercado y que quieren hacer esa transformación, up to them, ¿no? Eso tendría que estar aquí, ¿no?, dialogando con nosotros y viendo cómo poder hacer ese cambio. Y las que están empezando, desde luego, lo tienen difícil, porque no hay estructuras. Justo Begoña y yo estamos hablando, ¿no?, de que sería un sueño poder crear, pues, por ejemplo, una lavandería, ¿no?, una lavandería con una gestión diferente, para que, bueno, con toda su tecnología, para que muchos emprendedores la pudieran usar. La lanzo, por si alguien quiere coger el guante, estamos dispuestos a hablar de ello. Y bueno, pues por un lado tienen esa dificultad, por otro lado, al internalizar todos los costes cuando llegan al mercado, llegan con unos precios mucho más altos, que no quiero decir que no sean defendibles, lo tienen que defender, pero el tiempo que tardan en crear esa marca para defender esos precios, pues claro, es un tiempo que no todos aguantan y muchos de ellos se caen en el camino.
About the challenges of the industry, maybe Enrique, from your point of view, cooperating with industry.
Para nosotros es importante que una empresa asuma que tiene un impacto sobre el medio ambiente, sobre los recursos naturales, como primer paso, necesario que lo asuma. Que haga un análisis de riesgo, es decir, que vea su fuente de suministro, dónde está realmente, de dónde viene realmente ese impacto. Tenemos herramientas para hacer todo este tipo de cosas. Y que se comprometa, entendemos que esto no es una cosa que se hace de un día para otro, pero si uno no hace su punto de inicio, ¿no?, con el análisis de riesgo, se marca unos objetivos, unos indicadores y vas mejorando cuánto ahorro, cuánto algodón ecológico, algodón de tercoto utilizo, etcétera, es difícil ir haciendo ese cambio. Y esas son medidas internas que tiene que hacer la empresa y que además le sirve para tirar de su cadena de suministro o ir cambiando las cosas en su cadena de suministro. Pero yo creo que la empresa tiene algo más que hacer y esto es más externo y creo que puede responder a algunas de las inquietudes que han salido aquí y también que enganchan a los consumidores. Por un lado, la empresa tiene que juntarse con otras empresas para mejorar esto. Y la sostenibilidad no puede ser una ventaja competitiva. Busquen otra, pero el uso de los recursos del planeta no puede ser una ventaja competitiva. Y hay que juntarse, todos crear esas plataformas y entre todos ayudarse a mejorar esas prácticas y a poder ir cambiando esas prácticas porque cada vez son mejores. La empresa tiene que hacer acción política para cambiar la normativa y hacer que lo que es sostenible, que es caro y que es fashion, sea lo común y lo normal. Voy a poner un ejemplo con los televisores. Los televisores tienen un componente muy tóxico dentro que va de serie porque evita que cuando haya un incendio, en vez de explotar como explotaban antes, ahora se derriten. Eso está muy bien. Medidas de seguridad. Todas las medidas de seguridad que se tienen en muchas cosas, los temas ambientales deberían tenerlas incorporadas de serie en cualquier producto que saquemos. Y ahí las compañías tienen que hacer acción política para cambiar eso. Y el último paso que se le pide a la compañía es que encima haga restauración del entorno. Es decir, has usado los recursos naturales, has sacado el producto, has beneficiado del uso de esos recursos naturales del producto, que dejar el recurso natural de la mejor manera posible. Parte de tus beneficios los reinviertes en regenerar y en mantener ese producto. Ese es los 6 pasos del stewardship que nosotros en WWF estamos promoviendo y estamos empezando a trabajar con algunas empresas, ¿no? Son pasos claros y que hay que ir midiendo y no se piden de un día para otro, pero hay que empezar a dar.
Thank you, Enrique. You would like to...
I think that there's real power in the message of the last comment, that this idea that sustainability cannot be the marketing leverage feature, because you end up with 2 very well-intentioned companies, Patagonia and Levi as an example, who almost try to outcompete each other in the sustainability initiative space. And we end up coming up with, on my side, horrible ideas like the redeployment of post-consumer nylon fishing nets from the ocean into a post-consumer content jean, for example. That has resolved the first generation of waste problem by making a jean that's hybrid cotton nylon, and now is locked in perpetuity in a landfill, unrecyclable, because you cannot separate the two. Where, in fact, the solution perhaps is regulatory constraint that says if a fishing boat goes out of the harbor with 6 nets and comes back with 5, you have trouble, right? Those are the solutions needed, not the potential creation of a post-consumer waste stream that can then be marketed as a sustainable product to a public that isn't necessarily shouldn't be held to account, to know all the distinctions, like the fact that an intimate blend of cellulose and synthetic fiber can be turned into a new fiber. There is a need for taking sustainability out of this sort of one-upsmanship game and really going after regulatory considerations that are going to, for example, monetize the post-consumer cotton waste stream. In the United States, we have a 5-cent tariff on every glass bottle and every aluminum can. The monetized post-consumer waste stream takes the burden of recycling off of this second generation and puts it on the first. And we have nothing like that for fashion. We have nothing that takes a holistic approach to funding research and the recycling and second generation redeployment to clothes. There's no collective effort at resolving the problem of clothing waste. Instead, we have seasonal competitive marketing initiatives that use sustainability to gain an edge. And I think that this idea of broad, collective, pre-competitive collaboration to get something real done is what's called for.
I'd like to discuss a little bit about the power of partnerships. And I believe it's quite related to what we have been discussing here already. The word partnership has appeared several times. And it's about creating this co-competition stage in which you all can be players, but you also can work together, advocate together, as you were mentioning. That was something new, that companies advocate for changing laws, for instance. That there is a partnership between different agents from civil society, from the entrepreneurship world, from big companies, in sharing the responsibility of educating the consumer. Who should be educating the consumer? Should be you. Who should be the one? So I would like to discuss or to know your opinions about the power of partnerships in the industry and to see whether it's something that is feasible or how it should start in the first place with some little initiatives and which you believe would be the main drivers and the quick wins so that something like that would escalate. And then, because we have 20 minutes left, I'd like to open the floor to the participants and the public so that maybe they can ask a few questions as well. So the power of partnerships and seeing sustainability not as a competitive advantage but rather as a shared goal. Who would like to go first?
One of the things that I know we're interested in and we're very focused on right now is the Sustainable Apparel Coalition's HIG Index. And this is a tool that is, in a way, it's pretty competitive, as we're mentioning, and it's a collaboration between brands to try to come up with some KPIs about sustainability, both in terms of their brand impact, their supply chain impact, and their product impact. And one of the things that I think is very interesting that was developed is the design and development module, which is a tool that is supposed to help designers and developers create the most sustainable design at the very beginning so that we're not trying to fix errors afterwards, but we're creating the best product from the very beginning. And I'm not a designer, so I can't talk about it very specifically, but I know that it looks at certain things such as the actual production, the marker efficiency, the durability of the product, the end of use, and then hopefully at one point something like this could actually result in something like a product rating, which would be, if adopted by enough of the industry, and as far as I know, the SAC represents a very big amount of the apparel industry, then this could be something that is a consumer-facing type of an index, and consumers could then make a decision based on the sustainability score of the product. That would be the ideal end scenario, and it would be something that could also help to promote the consciousness in other consumers about the decisions that they're making.
Yo quizás también lo que me gustaría decir, ¿no? Aparte de este tipo de herramientas, que es verdad, ¿no? Que todos las usamos, son tremendamente útiles, creo que falta algo, cuando empiezas en esto, yo creo que tendríamos que tener la suficiente humildad para darnos cuenta de que ninguno tenemos la píldora mágica ni la solución y que falta mucho diálogo. O sea, no solamente crear herramientas, sino sentarse a la mesa, dialogar y buscar soluciones, ¿no? Empezar a cambiar un poco eso que dicen del win-win, ¿no? Pero hacerlo real, ¿no? Porque al final el win-win se queda en unos poquitos, ¿no? Y hacerlo realmente, pues eso, algo que sea algo para todos. Eso es un poco lo que yo veo de eso, del tema de colaborar, de hacer, no sé, que ganemos desde pues, el que está dibujando, al que está produciendo, al que está recogiendo el algodón, al que está en la fábrica, etcétera, etcétera.
I would say that someone says that to make shoes was a very complicated process and a complicated industry. I think that to make clothes is as well as complicated, and many different industries are involved. So to change the way the things are done, we need really expertise in every single area. So if we don't work all together, how we can change this? So it's absolutely necessary that everyone in this field puts the small part to make something very big.
I think there are a couple of different forms partnerships can take, and one of the most interesting, when I think of the dynamic between Patagonia and Levi's, is the unspoken partnership that exists at Herdamani in Sri Lanka, which is a shared vendor that is one of the most sustainably run factories you can possibly imagine. Rainwater collected to run the washing machines, solar energies to keep the dye bound. It's just an extraordinary facility that we both work with, that we both work hard to innovate at, and those innovations become shared knowledge base at that factory that then benefits both businesses in a subtle way that's not spoken because we don't like to talk about the idea of shared trade secrets, but in fact, this wealth of knowledge starts to coalesce at the factory level, and much more productive conversations happen when we engage the wisdom of the makers themselves, and that makes both companies better. Another opportunity for partnerships that I think is very important, if you think of the education of an architect, and I know in the United States it's very rigorous education around building codes, around around the certification at the state level or the certification at the lead level, that there is a consistent expectation of base level knowledge, specifically around sustainable building, that's required of an architect to become licensed. And there is no such commensurate expectation of a young fashion designer or a young garment technologist. And so Levi's independently will go out and we have teaching partnerships with Rhode Island School of Design. I'm faculty at California College of the Arts right now teaching the sustainable design course. But when you read other coursework and other syllabus or syllabi from other universities, that it's really scattershot, that there's no sort of collective body of knowledge that can be taught to young people, so that rather than going after post-problem compliance in the form of behavior or something and make it and then see how it turns out, can we teach people how to make it right without making so very many mistakes in the process? And I think more business engagement with the educational process is something that can be really useful, something modeled on architecture.
Thank you so much, Enrique.
Y es fundamental la colaboración y es fundamental la colaboración entre empresas, entre entidades no gubernamentales y entre entidades gubernamentales. Todos formamos parte del problema y todos formamos parte de la solución. Es muy fácil decirlo, son nostálgicos, pero la realidad es que hay que hacer esa colaboración a tres bandas y se pueden poner ejemplos. Quiero poner un ejemplo, tiene que ver, no tiene que ver con la moda, pero va a ser ilustrativo, que es, y lo relaciono con lo que tú decías de que qué raro que una empresa esté haciendo acción política. Puntualizo, las empresas son los mayores lobbies que hay en el mundo. Entonces se pasan el día haciendo acción política. Lo que tienes que hacer, exactamente, que ahí estamos, hay que hacer presionar para cambiar las leyes en beneficio de todos en el medio ambiente. Ese sería un gran paso. Y en ese sentido, poder escoger empresas actualmente de moda, que las hay, que están generando su propia energía a través de placas solares en sus fábricas, etcétera, 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 y que seguramente están penalizadas porque no hay un decreto de autoconsumo que facilite la energía que no producen por poder exportarla a la red. Entonces, en ERE, y esto enlazamos con algo que salió también ayer, en ERE hay una parte del sector empresarial de los combustibles fósiles peleando por tener una normativa que penalice el autoconsumo. Tienes empresas de moda haciendo una acción política conjuntamente con ONGs y con consumidores para favorecer el autoconsumo. Es una perfecta realidad. Se puede hacer. Que estamos intentando, pero hay que conseguir que el mensaje llegue desde todos los sectores. Y en ese sentido, la relación entre empresas, entidades gubernamentales, entidades no gubernamentales, cada vez va cogiendo una fuerza. Tiene que ser transparente y medible.
So transparency and accountability, two key words to end up a little bit the initial debate that we are having. I would like to open the floor to the public, whether you have any questions to any of the members of this panel today.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. I have a question regarding the role of major companies, in particular like Levi and Patagonia, and majors not only in terms of market shares, but also in terms of sustainability. What do you think is your role in terms of the relationship with smaller fashion companies? That is, we have seen with Gema that sometimes smaller fashion companies have difficulties in growing because the cost of sending to the market sustainable fashion is very high. And in other industries, smaller producers that try to gain sustainability are helped by the government, but we don't have such enforcement yet. So probably bigger firms could help smaller companies like you, or do you still see them as competition? How do you approach smaller sustainable fashion organizations? Do you compete with them? Do you help them? And if you help them, how? Thank you.
Who would like to go first?
I'll be very brief. So this isn't exactly my area. I can't speak very deeply about it. The only thing I do know is that if there's potentially not a competitor, but a supplier, and an example comes to mind with ULEX, which I've mentioned before. It's a supplier of a product that we are interested in. Then we'll try to partner with them and also make sure that their name is gotten out there because we believe in the product that they're making and they need some help at the very beginning. And we also have a fund that's called 20 million and change, and it's intended to provide some grants to entrepreneurs, potentially who could be part of our supply chain or not. But in those, especially in the area of as a provider of some sort of environmentally friendly fiber, if we need to provide some assistance in some way, then we generally would consider that.
One way that we support the sustainable fashion dialogue broadly is that we recognize the extraordinary cost of a good life cycle assessment. We only do them ourselves once every 5 or 7 years because the quality of information must be so high, the external consultants must be so diverse to get the right accurate information out there. So we just published our first life cycle assessment in 2015, our first one since 2008. And it just, the full granular detail of which went live on our website and is fully open source. It is multiple top products. The different distinctions between the products that were measured are made available, piece type versus yarn dye, fiber type, and all of that information so that smaller companies who could never afford the massive investment that an LCA takes can see the correlatory product category on our website and draw some fairly accurate assumptions about their own impact and use that information as a critical motivation for action, where they should focus their own energies. But then let me say that we have a very robust portfolio of collaborations at Levi's, and we structure our collaborative efforts based on generating fashion equity, press equity, Levi's plus Pendleton, Levi's plus opening ceremony, Levi's plus any number of plus Filson. These are not, they're never taken, they don't really take into account the potential value of Levi's plus insert small sustainable brand struggling to get off the ground in need of the type of support that our social and environmental sustainability office could provide. So what you're highlighting is a potential opportunity that right now isn't one that we pursue, and I think it's a great idea, and we should do more brand collaborations to help grow other companies with like-minded values.
Then I'll raise mine. I have a question for Paul. It's actually twofold. First of all, you're talking about durability as the kind of the 150-year-old sustainability story. Could that mean that people don't have to buy jeans anymore? That you can have like a leasing model because it's durable? How do you see that? As the mud example yesterday was mentioned.
It's, there's an interesting property about denim specifically, in that it is from the purchase of a very dark pair of jeans to the wear in over time to a very light pair of jeans is a kinetic, organic, personal process. I'm weirded out by other people's abrasion marks. I want my abrasion marks. I want my mustard stain. I want my tear. I think it's a particularly personal garment. The 501 holds the highest resale value online or in any secondary market. I think the next highest value would be held by Patagonia down best, that these two particular garments sustain value. So a leasing model is interesting and viable, but the intensity of distribution, service modeling, is so prohibitive against something whose value has suffered so much from ownership. When you imagine a $50 pair of jeans, after just moments in the hands of consumers worth only $20, the cost of sustaining the operational construct around the leasing model becomes somewhat, there's a diminishing return. So I see emotional durability as being a personal thing and not necessarily a communal or shared thing. Maybe that's not a popular view, but I like my jeans, not your jeans. You said you had a second?
Yeah, it was talking about not the durability, but the leasing model. So you don't see jeans as you mentioned in the Philips example, like jeans as a service or something like that.
We see potential for second life, second ownership, but not necessarily the...
Sometimes they're even better looking.
Better, and a venue for personalization, customization, the consumer as designer opportunity, but the leasing, the return to purveyor for resale is a little, is almost, there's almost a more dynamic relationship between consumer to consumer than the return to the brand and then redistribution by brand. I think what Patagonia's done with the eBay site, the sub-site that becomes the brand hosted venue for resale is an effective way around the challenge of a leasing agreement. I think that's probably more community-based, sort of organic secondary market system that takes the brand out of the equation, except for providing a brand experience in the sub-site of eBay.
So the producer being the owner of the raw materials is never going to happen.
Never is a strong word. When we've studied that or we've looked at it, there isn't a business value, or there isn't a business case to be made for our endowment in that. There's a really robust swap meet community out there where this transaction happens. Levi's hasn't managed to monetize it, and I don't think necessarily it's viable or ethical for us to do that.